last week, what we got into was from his position. So passing the guard against someone, you know, when you feel that they're actually carrying. This week, what I wanted to do was I wanted to get into actually accessing my gun when he is trying to defend and he's trying to anchor and stuff like that. So from here, obviously, first thing I'm gonna have to start dealing with is, you know, my shirt. And from here, it just becomes the same type of technique that we do before. I grab 4 fingers behind and I come up and then I can go ahead and grab. One of the things that we saw a couple times last week was as I start getting to this position, the gun just starts floating because he's starting to reach for it and stuff, and I start doing this, which it seems like I'm in a decent spot because I can kind of pull my gun away, but I also can't direct any shots at him either. Even if I am shooting, I run just as much risk of doing one of these numbers and doing what we call floating the gun. I run the risk of floating the gun and shooting myself just as much as I do him, especially with him reaching forward and grabbing for it. So I need to have this thing in a position where I can kind of pull this back in and then retain from here. But one of the things that I talked about last week, kind of briefly at the end of class, is controlling the real estate on the gun. So if I've got this portion right here, if this kind of makes up 50% of the gun, and I cover this up, then it leaves roughly 50% here for him to grab a hold of too, which means that both of us kind of have equal leverage. When we start getting into different types of guns, like guys start bringing out M&P shields and stuff like that, where, you know, what I just call 3-finger guns, where I can only get 3 fingers on here, you need to keep in mind that what you give up in real estate here, if it's not proportionate to what's left over here, you're gonna run the risk of getting disarmed. Back in the old days, guys used to take Glock 17s and they would cut the mags down or cut the grips down because the grip used to print on a Glock 17, but they wanted the longer barrel of a 17. So they would have this in here, but they would have the shorter handle. The problem is that now I've got essentially a 4-inch grip with a 5-inch barrel, which means that he's actually got better leverage than me. If he grabs a hold of the front, he's got better leverage than me to take it than I do to hold on to it. So all these things kind of come into consideration when you start actually choosing which gun you're gonna use. So the technique that we use standing up is gonna be the same thing. You have a couple different methods where I come in at the thumb here. The problem that some of you guys are gonna see is that as I grab the thumb here, I'm gonna end up snagging my belt and stuff like that, which is why I advocate having a couple different ways of clearing. So I grab behind here, I'm pulling back, I'm pulling over. It's not super critical at this position for me to keep that trap there because the gravity is just gonna hold it. But once I pull that over, then from here I can go ahead and grab. So that technique is the same. What I really wanted to start addressing today is when he comes down and he starts anchoring. So he's anchoring on that gun because once if this stays in the holster, then it's safe. It's safe to him, but it's also safe to me. The problem is that if his hand is under mine and I'm doing like this, I'm defensive, okay? If my hand is here and he's on top, then he's defensive. So it's gonna be basically whoever gets in and anchors that gun first is gonna be the one who has the option.